You know, I'm really lousy at paying attention to who is sent these emails, and I assumed it went to everyone.
Well, you know what's funny is Michael. Well, that's some pictures you know.
I call to order the September 11th, 2024 meeting of the North Allegheny School Board. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will start with our calendar review. Hi, I believe my light is on. Dr. Highland, is yours? Ah, there we go. Ooh.
They both have to be
They both have to be on, or mine won't be. Mine won't work. Okay, for our calendar review, we had an executive session this evening to discuss a personnel matter. We have our work session this evening with our human resources update and our survey data summary. And then 2 weeks from now, on September 25th, we will have our regular meeting and our North Allegheny Foundation report. We will start off this evening with the human resources update. Dr. Highland.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Warner. I am going to hand it off directly to Ms. Tracy and also make sure that we thank her department. As we all know, the start of the school year is their busy time of the year. Well, actually, it's the summer so that we can start the school year is the busy time of the year. And she's going to report to the board where we are from a human resources perspective. So, MJ?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Highland. Thank you to the board and the standing room only crowd here in the boardroom for our annual human resources report. As the board is well aware, we prepare this report every September, and it is based on the day 3 data for our school year. So that's why it appears this time of year, because as you can imagine, with any large employer, our numbers fluctuate throughout the year, retirements, resignations, hires, et cetera. So we stick with this day 3 data. So the first statistical slide we have for you is the amount of staffing we did over the summer. As Dr. Highland alluded to, my staff, our team is really busy over the summer, and also the administrative team as a whole. A lot of interviewing takes place to land on just that one, candidate that everybody thinks is the best for that position. There are an awful lot of interviews and background screening that goes on. So people have been very busy to staff us for the school year. This slide, you may think, well, geez, did we really, have that many open positions? This also reflects internal movement. So when you see internal candidates of, 15 for elementary schools, 3 for middle schools, 4 for high schools, for professional staff, a lot of our teachers, that's someone who says, hey, I may want to try a different building or a different grade level or a different subject. So the way it works for us is you have to apply for that. You don't just get to move. So we did have a lot of opportunity this summer to place people in new spots this school year. And we're really excited. We think it's going to be a great year as a result. Our second slide is the one I think people always find the most popular is our FTE positions by classification. The FTE, the full-time equivalent, is why you see certain numbers that might be 15.1 or 15.7. It's because not everybody works a 1.0 full-time schedule. So this is the FTE positions by classification. It shows you some movement over the years. As I think many are aware who were on the board last year when we discussed this and the year before, there used to be a way of calculating where we didn't count any open positions. We count those now. So the last year to sort of roll off in that calculation is that 21-22 school year. So really for comparison of year over year, it's really best to start looking in 22, 23 last year, and then now this year on day 3. Couple things to point out for folks, the increase of administrators. We did, the board had voted over the last year to reorganize some departments, found some opportunities to add a supervisor for the special education and gifted education, adding a coordinator for special education and gifted education. That also it adds that transition work for our high school students who stay a couple extra years. And then also a chief of school police. Those are administrative changes that took us from 37 to 40. Some of the professional employees, there's full-time, part-time, and long-term substitutes. The full-time and part-time are contracted employees. Some of that increase of the 5 increase year over year, last year to this year, include the 2 social workers. I think it's 2, right? Have that right? It was 2? Amy? Dr. DeLuca? 2, getting that confirmation. That includes our social workers. And then we always have a couple of new sections in elementary schools, especially where the first year we add the new section, it's a long-term sub to see if the enrollment numbers firm up year over year. If they do, the second year that becomes a contract. And that's part of our agreement with our professional staff. So some of those increases occur because we have our enrollments up and has sustained. So have some minor fluctuations in some of the other positions. And then you'll see for the first time this year, we have a separate line for our school police officers. These are classification of positions by our employee groups. And we now have one for our safety, our school police officers. So just wanted to point that out. I will note we still have for those listening at home who may be looking for positions. At the end, we will discuss what open ones we have, but also we know we only have, and I say only because this is, I think, the best year we've started in my 4 years here, just 2 professional vacancies right now, because there were 3 and 1 is on the board's agenda to vote at the end of the month. So we just have 1 position opening at Franklin Elementary and 1 at Ingomar Elementary School. And otherwise we are fully staffed for our teachers and other professional employees. So that was really exciting for us to start the year that way. All right, our next slide is staff ratios of local districts. Just the one thing to note, we always use our day 3 numbers for this school year, but the data that's available for other districts is 1 year behind. So you'll note on there, it's North Allegheny is the 3rd day enrollment for the 24-25 school year, but all the other districts listed are last year's numbers. So we still stack up pretty well as far as the 3rd column there, the last column on the right is professional staff to student ratio. And we're sitting at about 1 to 12, which is similar to most of your top performing similar districts in the area. And again, professional staff are all the professionals that assist our students. It's not just classroom teachers, it's also, counselors and psychologists and the behavioral support specialists and anyone who holds that professional certification, but they're all counted, and all districts do that the same way. But I just want to point out that we have a lot of professionals that lend support to our students on a daily basis that aren't just classroom teachers. The next educational information slide, this notes for our new hires this year. The NA grads, we hired 8 this year for NA grads. We also hired 6 folks who were student teachers here. Last year we only had 1. So, that's a nice perk to that program to get some experience at NA with our teaching staff and then to get hired on. So, and our hires with master's degrees have increased this year over last year. The next slide is one I think people just always like to see, which schools we're hiring from. We have the most master's degree earned this year's class. Duquesne is the front runner there with 7 folks who were hired with master's degrees, closely followed by the University of Pittsburgh. For those wanting to know where Penn State is, I think that is in the also Rand's column, but we probably are just all with the doctorates, beloved Nittany Lions. And I have some on the board here. But my boss is a University of Pittsburgh grad, so I like to point that out. Our next are the recruiting initiatives. I know it's small print, but it's some of that is to show you and demonstrate that we really do cast our net widely to try to find the best and most talented staff for our students. And so some of these are just some of the websites and professional associations we post our jobs with. A lot of them are the spring hire when we have all our jobs open in the spring. This year it was the beginning of March, where we throw it out there for everybody and just try to get our recruiting pools built up as much as possible. And then our administrators are able to go back to those pools all summer long as our jobs open up. So we want to make sure we always have the best talent. And if anyone has additional organizations you'd like us to look into to post jobs, we're always open to hear about them. And the last slide, as promised, some of the employment opportunities we have in the district. We're always looking to hire talent to help our students. We have some special education assistant positions open. Those are full-time positions. If someone is listening and wants a part-time job, student service assistant might be a good position for you. That's helping out in the middle of the school day in our elementary schools. We're always looking for good custodians, maintenance employees, bus drivers and mechanics. We're always willing, as everyone here knows, we'll train you to be a bus driver. We'll also train you to be a special education assistant. You will note, though, on this month's board agenda, we will have, spoiler alert, we do have one mechanic, but we're looking to have some more. Mr. Mergen and his team have been very busy. And substitutes. There's a lot of opportunity to help our students on what schedule suits everyone listening. Because we have day-to-day substitute opportunities. We have paraprofessional opportunities. If you don't want to teach, you can always assist in another manner. And guest substitutes are for folks who want to be a substitute teacher in a classroom but don't have a teaching certification. The Pennsylvania allows you to be a guest substitute with a bachelor's degree. There is a new training session starting this month, September 26th. We will be up at the Ponce Room at the Barrel Center. If you need more information, contact my office. That, I think, is all we have. Willing to take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy. Does anyone have any comments or questions? See. Thank you so much. Do we also need cafeteria workers, even though that's not necessarily, do you know?
Great call out. We sure do. I just saw on our social media the other day, I think Mr. Gore posted on behalf of METS Culinary Management, runs our food service program here at the district. And they're always looking for individuals to work in their program as well. And I think there's information on our social media pages for that, or you can contact Jay West from METS. He works out of our senior high school. His email, if you need, I think is just jwest@northallegheny.org. And they're always looking for great people to work in our cafeterias.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tracy. Thank you to you and your entire team. Okay, Dr. Highland, we can move on to our next presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Tonight, maybe I should stay back. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Tonight, we're going to review with the community the results. If I speak loud enough, can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Tonight, we're going to share with the community the results of our parent-student survey that we initiated last year in May. And one of the things that we discussed was making sure that when we got these results, we shared it with our community and that we were transparent. And so tonight we're going to do that. Not only are we going to share some of what we see as our top 4 strengths and our top 4 opportunities for improvement through at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary level. We are also going to share with the community the results of every single question that we had on our survey. Next year, like I said, we're doing that by grade span. Next year, we intend to share those results based off of each individual building, so that if a parent or a student wanted to know how their school was performing on those particular metrics, they would have the opportunity to see that. So, next slide. As you all know, the board is hopefully going to approve our strategic and comprehensive plan this month. And some of the key principles that we had within that plan fit nicely when we talk about reporting the results of our surveys. One, we are measuring. We are measuring the things that we do. We've shared with each one of our faculties and staff, if you don't measure it, it doesn't count. And so we're going to measure as much as possible. Tonight is going to be an example of that. We are going to be transparent with our community so that they can see not only the great things we're doing, which there are numerous great things that we're doing, but they're also going to see the areas where we have opportunities for growth. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we continuously improve, and we're going to make it so that our constituents and our family and the people that we serve have a user-friendly document that they can understand and they can easily interpret. Next slide. You're going to begin to see this a lot in all the presentations. And the reason is because we want people to be focused on the goals that we have as a district, the goals that this board has set for us, and the goals that we are responsible for making sure that we attain. So when you look at some of the questions that are in the survey that, the board had looked at in the spring, each one of those goals is somewhere represented within that survey. And I think it's important that we constantly go back to our goals so that we know what our true North Star is in this district. Next slide. As you all know, for those people who may be hearing this online, we just wanted to give an example. With that survey went out towards, I think it was the third week in May last year. And it asked a significant number of questions. And it gave people an opportunity to say, do they strongly agree? Do they agree? Do they disagree? Do they strongly disagree? And if you notice, we didn't have a middle answer in there because we wanted people to be able to choose one way or the other. Next slide. And so the survey went out to all our students in 5th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade in May of 2024. We also gave our parents the opportunity, if they so chose to do so, to have their students opt out of the survey if they didn't feel comfortable with any of the questions. So we gave all our parents the opportunity to review the survey in advance. To my knowledge, there were maybe 1 or 2 students that said that our parents that indicated that they did not want their child to take a survey, and we honored that request. From the numbers that we had 2,387 students that responded to the survey. We sent out the survey to every single parent in the district, and we sent out multiple links if they had multiple students within their home. And the response rate was 2,340. Our goal, and one of the reasons that we're going over this presentation tonight, is so that our community can see that we are taking those results and we are going to try and do something with those results in the hope that we can get even a higher return on those surveys. I think oftentimes people get surveys and they don't necessarily engage in the survey because I don't think there's a lot of confidence that the data that they put down is actually going to be used. We want to make sure that we reinforce that, number one, we are reading it, we are looking to address our strengths and our weaknesses, and we're going to get better, and we're going to make sure that we report that data to our community. Next slide. And so, as I stated earlier, we have this divided into 3 segments tonight: elementary, middle, and our high school level. And so at this point, I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Dow, who's going to talk about our strengths in elementary and also our opportunities for growth. It should be noted for the board, we did this in a very clinical fashion. We took what we perceived or took from the raw data, what were our highest scores. That doesn't necessarily mean there weren't other questions that we want to dive more deeply into. However, these were our highest and our lowest as a percentage of the respondents who did answer the survey. And one other thing that I do want to add is in our balanced scorecard, which we reviewed with the public and the board's set to approve this month, there are certain things that we are going to focus on. Those things that are not necessarily key performance indicators does not mean that a school will not focus on some of the results there. When we band these together, you may find out that one school has a particular strength in an area and another one has an opportunity for growth. And so we've empowered our principals to look at that data and do what they think is necessary to, number one, improve that data and to make improvements within their school. So at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Dow so she can talk about our elementary students.
Good evening. That's really loud.
Can you hear me without that? All right, I think I'll do that because it sounds like it's going to reverberate. Well, I get the pleasure of talking about our elementary schools, and these results are the result from 7 of our elementary schools all banded together. So our first strength, which I think is fantastic, is school is safe and secure. And if you look, both our student and our parents, 98% reported that they felt the school is safe and secure. Students, we had 7 students who didn't. So I think that overall, with over 2,300 students responding, that's fantastic. Our second area of strength was the principal cares and treats students with respect at my school. Again, we are at 97.8% for parents and 97.4% for students. This is wonderful. Our principals go above and beyond to make sure that our students feel like they are part of the school community, and it shows in these results. Our third strength, again, this is very similar to number one, but feels safe at school. We have 98.74% for parents and 96.43% for students. I think the two go really well together. I think our recent addition of our school police probably has a big factor in this as well. And our fourth strength goes right along with number two, where the principal is the teachers and staff care and treat students with respect. And this, for me, it just shows what quality staff we have here and working with our elementary students. 98% of our parents feel that our teachers care about their students, and 95% of our students feel that way. So we're looking at two areas that are very similar, but I think are really important for our elementary staff. Our areas for improvement, the first one that came up is I'm satisfied with the food service offered at school. And you will see we have a little bit of a difference here between our parents and our students. So one of the things that we've had some long conversations, the principals, about this is we really want to understand from the students what that means to them. You know, are they wishing that we're serving chocolate chip cookies every day, or is this they don't like the taste of the food? So we really need to dig into what that information is, and we will do that throughout this year.
Parents are also happy they're not making
Yes. All right, our second area for improvement is able to appropriately manage school-related stressors. I think it's really important that when you look at the goals and the key performance indicators in our balanced scorecard, we didn't focus just on academics. We also looked at the mental health piece, and this question directly relates to that. And I think this is something that we need to be very well aware of. I know since COVID, this has been something that has increased. And so this is something that the principals, we will work in our action plan for ways that we can help them learn to manage their school-related stressors. But I thought it was interesting that parents and students were pretty similar in their responses here. Our third area for improvement is the curricula is rigorous and challenging. And you look, we have a little bit of a difference here between parents. They were about 85%, students 67%. One of the things we did discuss is that we need to make sure, for elementary, this was 5th grade students responding to the survey. We need to make sure that they understand what that question is asking and what a rigorous curriculum looks like. So we will do some education with them on that nomenclature so that they understand exactly what we mean by that this year. We'll see if that helps to improve that area. And finally, homework assignments are meaningful and help me to learn. I will tell you that this is the one that the principals are the one they want to look into the most, because if only 71% of our students are feeling that it's meaningful and helping them to learn, we've got to look at what we're doing in the area of homework. And that they understand what it's for, not just that they don't want to do homework, but do they understand how it's helping them. So I think we have some education to do here to make sure that we are giving things that are meaningful and relevant to the students. And I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Durango.
Thank you, Dr. Dow. We see very similar themes across the progression from elementary to the middle school aspects as well. We begin with our first strength across all 3 middle schools joined together. Number 1 is, again, safety. School is safe and secure as depicted by both the parents and the students, very similar across their percentages. The second strength for middle schools is 96%. When requested, I receive appropriate assistance with my iPad and laptop. That's kudos and credit to our information technology department being supportive for the students and making sure they have the necessary tools and students are equipped with the tools needed to support their learning in the classroom. They're very timely, and I know that has always been something the students have appreciated, especially at the middle school level where iPads tend to get dropped, accidental damage, and those types of things. Number 3 strength, my principal cares and treats students with respect at my school. This is once again kudos to the leadership that we have, the culture that has been created, not just at the middle school, but K-12 in the school district. We're very excited to have the leadership that we have to provide that type of a culture in the school for students. Also, number 4, Not just the building itself with the leadership of the principal, but also the sense of feeling safe and secure in school. 95 and 96 respectively with the parents and students highlights the fourth strength of the middle school experience for students. Now for areas of improvement, once again, similar to the elementary, my homework assignments are meaningful and help me learn. You'll see a little bit of a discrepancy between the parental perspective of homework assignments in their opportunity to help students learn, and obviously a student's interpretation at the middle school level, where any homework at times can be a reluctance for completion. What I will say is we are digging deeper into this, and I would say that it's anticipated that a higher level of homework is expected somewhat in the area of English language arts and mathematics, but that's also something that we have talked about as departments with the chairs and also the teaching staff. So we'll continue to look at that and move forward, and also the concept of differentiation for homework. Number two, I'm aware of the mental health supports offered at my school, obviously with the new developments of student services and a higher level of intentional support for students. You can see that we're also going to be working on making sure that all the community, including the parents and students, are aware of the resources that we have at school and how to access them when it's appropriate. Number three, students treat other students with respect at my school. You can see a higher level of perception from the parent community in terms of versus the students' perception of treating other students with respect at school. Obviously, adolescence is a challenging time, and that's obviously something that we work on every day at a middle school, but I think it's important to see that students do believe that there is an area for improvement. And I think it's a great opportunity for student voice to demonstrate that for us as something to continue to examine and move forward. And finally, a fourth area of improvement for middle school. Once again, I'm satisfied with the food service. Parents, 83% are very happy that they're not responsible for making it or having the students eat it, whereas the students, just under 70%, would like to see a little bit of improvement. And unfortunately, Chick-fil-A and Starbucks is still not a part of that diet at school, which I'm sure would be number one. But I would put up the chicken for that with any of them. High school strengths, number one. Feel safe traveling to and from school on district transportation. Kudos to Mr. Bergen and his force of drivers and all the support services that provide that for our students. 95% rating, both from the parents and students. Once again, the theme of safety. This is 9 through 12, NAI and NASH combined. 95% across the board of the students, just under 95 for parents, have a sense of safety at school. Obviously, the efforts of the school district providing additional safety and support in the buildings for that to exist. Number three, not only the feeling of safety at a personal level, but also the school itself. My school is safe and secure. The day-to-day operations and the systems that we have in place provide a sense of safety and security for our students and our community. And number four strength, when requested, once again, our technology department with the laptops at both NAI and NASH, 94.77% in terms of the support required for those students to maintain the tools that they need to continue to learn. Areas of growth, 66.83%, homework assignments being meaningful and helping me to learn. Once again, this is a talking point that we have with our curriculum center. And I do believe the numbers would look very different depending on the department or the content discipline that we're examining. So that is something that we will continue to look at. Students treat other students with respect at my school. This is a challenge. The parents have a little bit higher perception of that. And the students, 64% are demonstrating something that we need to continue to look at and find ways to increase that score across our students, across the buildings. Number three, once again, being aware of the mental health supports offered at my school, the same at the elementary and middle level. And finally, number four, area of improvement, the school monitors my performance in a proactive manner to identify and address learning needs. 67% parents. This is unique because the students actually have a higher perception of the support that exists in the building through the schools with the teacher intervention and the tiered intervention for supports. Also our school counselors that work very hard to provide that support. But I think we could probably do a little bit better job of also making parents more aware of the supports that exist within the school. And sometimes it's not a need until it becomes an issue. So we can maybe look at ways to be more proactive to make sure that those strategies and areas of support are more known to both the community and the students. That's it for the middle school and the high school.
All right, and to conclude this, we are creating a staff survey that will be developed and distributed this year. The results of that survey will be triangulated with the student and parent survey so that we will have a full picture of how we are doing and what our strengths are and what are areas that we need to continue to work on. And if you would like to, this QR code will take you to the district survey results. Thank you.
Also, if we could go ahead and, can we click on that link so we can actually show the board members where it is on the website, where the results of the survey are? So if you go under the district's strategic and comprehensive plan, you'll notice that we put a link to the, on the far left-hand side, 2024 district survey results, and it's broken down by each grade level, every single question that we asked on that survey, and the results that went along with it. And at this time, we are more than willing to take questions from the board.
I'm not even going to try the mic. Anybody have any questions or comments? Mr. McClure?
Just one question on slide number 11, which is the second one for areas of improvement for the elementaries. Help me understand why there's a gray area there. Is that just people who didn't answer that question?
Correct. They chose NA, they did not choose to answer the question.
Interesting that that's the only one that I noticed in this whole set that there were unanswered questions there.
There are a few, one other example where we had that was under activities for fifth graders. There seemed to be a group of fifth grade parents that didn't answer that question. So there were some that were nuanced with fifth grade versus some of the other grades.
Okay, thank you.
It could be, Mr. McClure, that maybe they're not feeling stressed, so we have to look at that question. And
Good
it
point.
could be part of the dark green because they're not feeling anything as well. So that's one of the, could be a potential flaw in the question. We're going to look at that as well.
All right, good, thank you.
Dr. Gibbs?
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Are we on? Maybe not? All right.
Push Mike's button as well.
Now we're on. Okay. First, Mr. McClure, thank you for asking that question about slide 11. I had the same question. I'm glad to know someone else noticed it too. So my question is, in these areas that need some work, are there plans in place to try to look at whether or not the people who are expressing either frustration or difficulties in that area are evenly distributed among all the demographics of our students because we have a lot of variety of students, or are they localized in a subcategory of students? Is there effort or plans to try to sort out which students and what sorts of characteristics those students have that are associated with some of the areas that we have need for improvement? Do you understand that question?
I do.
So this survey is anonymous. We don't ask for those identifying factors at this point, so there is not anywhere that we would be able to do that with to get some categories. I think that we are, though, looking at grade levels and specific buildings. So we are looking at this by building, by grade level. So I think that helps us to identify if we have areas that we may need to specifically target because they are lower in something versus another school or grade level.
I would also add to that, Dr. Gibbs, part of solving a problem is first you have to identify what the problem is.
And so we've certainly identified that there are areas that we did not score as well as we would like to. If you notice in the key performance indicators, one of those is we are going to have our administrators meet more frequently with students. We are going to have board members meet more frequently with students. And oftentimes you can take some of that data that you have and you drill down and you have focus groups. But part of that will be in the action planning that will go on. Our teachers are just getting this information, right? They just came back, a month ago. And so, number one, we have to introduce the data to them so that they are, for some people, this data may be surprising, but it will, for some people, they're gonna be surprised. I know there's one particular school where they thought the PBIS was working perfectly, and they found that maybe it needs to work even more perfect than it is. And so when we meet with those students and we start to drill down and figure out what are some of the areas, I think that's when we start talking about if there are specific groups we need to look at and talk about whether they are having issues and whether they are treating people with respect. The interesting part about this data is that we did ask some other questions with regard to, do we treat students with respect with regard to certain demographics that those kids bring to the table? And the numbers were not as high, which was very interesting to us. So we have to work through that data. But I do think the win out of all this is we're looking at it. You know, where before maybe we did not. And now we're going to see whether we're going to improve on these numbers and whether the action plans that we put into place will help us to continuously improve.
Thank you.
Ms. Hardy. No, other deal
Sure. I just want to say thank you very much to administration for this presentation. I really appreciate that the district is getting back to a fundamental level of accountability here, where we ask our students and families how the district is doing, listen to that feedback, and acknowledge our success as well as our opportunities for improvement. As mentioned, there's one big piece missing here, of course, and that's feedback from our teachers and staff. I look forward to hearing what they have to say when they're included in this process next year. Huge thanks to the students and families who shared their thoughts with us on the survey last spring. We're listening to you, and I hope even more people will take the opportunity to give feedback this next year. Thank you so much, Mrs. Board.
Ms. Britton-Dozier.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. It seems like it was working for you, but not for you. Can you hear me? No? It's not. And I don't project like.
So I want to say thank you for completing this survey. I think it's very courageous to identify not only where we're doing really great work, but where we also have areas of opportunity. And I think it's, as you said, the first step. I'd like to understand what the update cadence will be in terms of the improvements and the action plan. Will this be a quarterly review, an annual review? I know we plan on doing the survey every year, but will we have frequent updates?
I can take my, how about I pull right out? So it's going to be on an annual basis. The only reason we do that is because we give the survey on an annual basis. And so when we take that data, it takes a while to take that data, disaggregate that data, and then go back and go through the continuous improvement loop. So next year, this is something that will be on the board agenda all the time to measure whether we are improving or not. Now, anecdotally, that doesn't necessarily mean that if we have an action plan and one of those things indicates that, I don't know, that students are not treating each other with respect in the cafeteria area. That doesn't mean a principal's not going to go and talk to those cafeteria monitors and try and solve it on a more acute level. But on a more systemic level, it'll be on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will just add, even with the food service being an area for improvement, they are still doing better than I am as the chief cook at the Warner household, especially now that my teenage son went off to college. I think my ratings really went down. I really appreciate the transparency of listing the top four and the top four areas we're doing well and the top four areas for improvement. I am wondering whether Dr. Highland or either of you guys over there have any feedback on, since everything is online, is there anything that you saw that didn't make the top or the top in this presentation that stood out for you as something that you're excited about or something that you also noticed really needs some improvement in the district?
I will take the one that I look at. To me is most important. I would recommend the North Allegheny School District to someone moving to Western Pennsylvania. That is a source of pride I think for our administrative team, and I think it should be for the board. When we have 94% of our parents at elementary and 94% at the middle school level saying that they would recommend our district to somebody, in today's society, if we can get over 9 out of 10 people to say something is really, really great, I think that's fantastic. The one that gives me a little bit of pause is at the high school level that we have 86%, and that's still a good number. 86 is a good number, but I would like to see that at least 90 where they would recommend our district to somebody in Western Pennsylvania. I think that's a pretty important metric. So that would be my answer to that question. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. If they have anything they'd like to say.
I think one of the things that came and stood out to me, there were some comments in the anecdotal notes that made it stand out for me, was just about utilizing my child's classroom Blackboard page to learn about classroom activities. Parents at the elementary level scored that at 71%, and that's much lower than I would like. I think we've had some comments and things made about our learning management system, so this is something that we need to dig in and make sure that we have the best system in place for that, and I'm not sure Blackboard is that. And so those are things that we are assessing this year. The IT department is really working on that, so that was a highlight for me. It was towards the bottom, wasn't in the low 4, but there were a lot of comments made about it.
I think for me, what I would hope to be able to achieve, especially at the secondary level, but mainly because of the opportunities as they increase as students progress through the system, is that deeper connection to school. We pride ourselves on providing opportunities in the area of academics, athletics, and the arts, and each of those three are equally critical in establishing a connection for a student to celebrate and experience success in the school district. If we're able to achieve that connection as a number one strength, I would argue that we would have meeting the target of the balanced scorecard across all aspects.
Thank you all. And I really had to push my current 11th grader to fill out this survey last year, and I really hope that people seeing this presentation, this data used in our balanced scorecard, and that the data from every single question is available on our webpage. You know, my daughter said, I don't want to do this because no one looks at this, no one cares, it's not going to make any difference. But, you know, we are putting this information out there and making plans to improve it. So I really hope it makes a difference for those kids that are like, well, no one's going to listen to me anyway, or parents that may feel the same way, because we really are making the effort, and you can see it in this presentation tonight and on our webpage. And now we can move on to our student activities report. Mr. Corona, would you like to handle both of them this evening? Or,
Yep.
Okay, let me pull it up. Well, first off, thank you, Mrs. Warner. Unfortunately, Julianne couldn't join us tonight. She's a little under the weather. So at NAI, the Student Council freshman orientation, walk your schedule night, and open house were all huge successes. The other officers and Julianne, as well as some of the peers, volunteered to help open lockers, find classrooms, and answer questions about schedules for all three events. They've had an overwhelming flow of applicants to join Student Council, both from incoming freshmen and returning members. There are big things in the work in the next few weeks regarding student and staff appreciation and the Principal's Advisory Committee. Many other clubs and organizations such as DECA, Heart for Her, Multicultural Student Union, and the Robotics Club are all getting ready for their first meetings at the 9th to 10th grade activity fair on the 20th. And for my report, many clubs and organizations at NASH, including HOSA, Best Buddies, Student Council, and Key Club, hosted a table at the August 30th activities fair and received a promising amount of student interest. The North Allegheny Tiger Marching Band started preparing for the 2024 to 2025 school year during the summer. They held their annual band camp in August to prepare for football games and community events. The year began with a parent preview show and a performance at the Kennywood Parade. So far, they played at football games and most recently the City of Pittsburgh Labor Day Parade. They are eager to continue performing at football games and upcoming events like the McCandless Day and Allegheny Valley Band Festival and participate in North Allegheny homecoming celebrations. NASH Student Council has started preparations for the 2024 homecoming dance. We will also have a float at the homecoming parade. I myself will be hosting my first Principal's Advisory luncheon of the school year this Friday, September 13th, with the NASH administrative team. We are looking forward to meeting with a cross-section of students to discuss any of their concerns and ideas they might have. In addition to my report, there will be one item for board consideration at the regular meeting. That item is a trip for Gold students to travel to Global Silicon Valley / Penn State Global Impact Forum in Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corona. Any questions or comments on the student activities report? Okay, then we can move on to Ms. Hardy and the curriculum report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This month, there are 4 items for board consideration in the curriculum report, and they are the adoption of a textbook for the district's Business, Computer, and Information Technology Department and Marketing course, the adoption of a textbook for our AP Environmental Science course, the approval of a contract with Life Touch Photography, and the approval of the district to participate in the PA Student Teacher Support.
Any comments, Ms. Hardy?
Yes, Mrs. Warner. Both the marketing and AP environmental science textbooks will have been available here at CAO for review for over 30 days by the time the board votes for them in 2 weeks, in compliance with Section 3 of Board Policy 108, adoption of textbooks and novels. I wanted to let the board know the PA Student Teacher Support Program is a program designed to reduce teacher shortages in Pennsylvania. It's administered through the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency and is of no cost to the district. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mrs. Warner.
Any other comments or questions on the curriculum report? Okay, then we can move on to Mr. Weniger and the finance report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. There will be 3 items for board action this month and 2 information-only items. The 3 action items are the student expenditures for July 2024, the accounts payable list, and the audit engagement. And the 2 information-only items are the 24-25 August forecast and the ending cash balances for August 31st of 2024.
Any comments, Mr. Weniger?
Yeah, the audit engagement, we heard a lot this evening about our strategic plan and some data. So the audit engagement is actually an extra step that we're going to take to show transparency and how we show all of our financial information for the district. So some of the other districts in the area do it. We thought it would be a good step to take. And so there's a little bit of an additional cost for accountants to go through that to provide some additional analysis, but that's what that item is for.
Thank you, Mr. Weniger. I'll note we're paying a little bit more for our auditors to do this for us, but also our staff, Mr. Hauser and Ms. Raygard, and I believe the whole finance department has more work to do to make this happen. But I believe the only other school district in the area that does this is Hampton. And I remember reading it in the local paper last year, and I was a little jealous that they were able to pull this off. And I'm really happy that Mr. Hauser has taken the lead on this, and that we're going to be able to be one of the few school districts that also is going to implement this additional measure of transparency. Does anyone else have any comments on the finance report? Okay, then we can move on to the human resources report. Ms. Britton Dozier.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. At our voting meeting this month, we'll have at least 9 voting items.
in the HR folder. The items include resignations and retirements, appointments, wage and status changes, leaves of absence, honoraria and club activities, recognition for additional education, tuition reimbursement for additional education, supplemental contracts, and the K through 9 math coach position.
Any comments, Ms. Grimm Dozier?
Yes, please, if I may. Relative to item number 1, resignations and retirement, thank you to the employees of our district for their work and efforts on behalf of our student and community. Related to items number 5, honoraria and club activities, and 8, supplemental contracts, thank you to the teachers and staff who are willing to commit their time and efforts to provide our students with club activities and extracurricular activities. And then related to item number 9, the K through 8 math coach position, as the district continues to laser focus on ways to enhance and strengthen academics, this position is to support teachers in implementing mathematics strategies across grades K through 9. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the Human Resources Report? Mr. Corona?
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I noticed under supplemental contracts that Bailey Chick is under there for resignations, and I just wanted to pay tribute and say thank you to her. She was the head rowing coach for 6 years for North Allegheny, and she really transformed the team. She got the team before COVID, and it had 11 members. And now we are proud to say we have over 50. And she was just an excellent coach, and I thank her for all that she's done. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments on this report? We can move on to Mr. McClure in the Property and Supplies Report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. There we go. 2 items for consideration next week. First one being the acceptance and confirmation agreements for the purchase and delivery of natural gas throughout the district. Second being the HVAC unit vents replacement at the People's Elementary School. Comments? Sure. The natural gas contracts, anyone reading the folder is going to see a whole lot of blanks there. That's a fast moving item that by voting on this, hopefully we'll have numbers plugged in there next week or 2 weeks from now. But it moves so quickly to be able to jump on those with very little notice is very helpful. Some of you may remember when we first stepped outside the AIU consortium some years ago for, I believe it was electricity originally. But because NA is a big dog with a lot of property, I remember the number very, very clearly that by not being in the AIU consortium and buying it through a broker who happens to be a North Allegheny property owner and children in the schools, we saved $666,000 over a 3-year contract back then. So we have a lot of confidence in the way this works, and this program has been very good. So the unit vents over at Peebles, that's a budget item that's coming in under budget and needed item and part of our capital plan. Thank you.
Any other comments on property and supplies? Okay, we can move on to the school board report. Mrs. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Next week, we will hold our election of the Pennsylvania School Board Association officers. That concludes my report.
Any questions on that item? Okay, we can move on to the student services report and Dr. Gibbs.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Warner. So there are 7 items for board action at this time at our next meeting. The first is approval of a memo of understanding with the Pennsylvania Connecting Communities, PACC. The second is approval of an agreement with the Southwood Children's Behavioral Healthcare Hospital. The third is an agreement with Class Academy. The fourth is a memo of understanding with Pittsburgh Mercy. The fifth is an agreement with the Spiro Educational Services. The 6th is a renewal of a letter of agreement with the MAPS program. MAPS stands for Maximizing All Potentials Program. And then the 7th is approval of some dollars for staff members to attend the SAP refresher course. SAP stands for the Student Assistance Program refresher course. And then there's one information-only item, which is a letter of agreement with WISCA. WISCA is the Watson Institute Social Center for Academic Achievement.
Any comments, Dr. Gibbs?
No, I have no comments.
Anyone else? Okay, we can move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Highland.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. We have 6 items that will be on the board agenda at the next meeting. The first is the adoption of the 2024 through 2027 Strategic and Comprehensive Plan. The second is an advertising agreement with DJ's Barbecue. Third is an advertising agreement with Bid Bath LLC. The fourth is the professional seminars and professional development. The fifth is a second read. This is second read of policy 007 and the second read of policy 011. We also have, for information only, 4 policies that will be considered as a first read. The first one is policy 000, which is board policy, procedure, administrative regulations. Policy 001, name and classification. Policy 002, authority and powers. And policy 004, membership, all page turners.
Thank you, Dr. Highland. Anyone have any questions or comments on the superintendent's report? Okay. That concludes our folders for this evening. Now we will move on to speakers on non-voting items. We had one speaker pre-register for 5 minutes to speak this evening. Mr. Marsico, can you please, I guess we already know your name, but can you state your address also for the record? You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mark Marsico, 1544 Montgomery Road, Allison Park, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Allison Park, PA, 15101. I have 2 daughters who attend North Allegheny schools, and I am ready. I'm compelled to speak publicly tonight to formally ask the board to add the novel Speak to North Allegheny's English language arts curriculum. Someone I knew well suffered the unspeakable. A day like today, you'll never forget. She, like most rape survivors, experienced confusion, self-doubt, self-blame, and persistent fear. She, like too many rape survivors, was afraid no one would believe her and refused to seek justice. I began writing about the experience after her death. Consequently, I've read way too many books on sexual assault. Shattered Silences, Know My Name, Lucky, I Will Find You, and at least a half a dozen others, including the novel Speak by Laurie Halls Anderson. Now, we're familiar with her work, right? Because her novel Fever 1793 is already part of our curriculum. Speak is a product of her own sexual assault as a rising 9th grader. It received critical acclaim and has sold more than 3 million copies. The novel is available in the libraries at all 3 of our middle schools, as a novel and graphic novel at both of our high schools, and at our community library on the Hill, as it should be. We can do more. I, for most of the past 2 years, have been quietly advocating to have Speak included in our curriculum, because silence is the rapist's only superpower, enabling them to strike those we love with immunity. I also believe that including Speak in our curriculum will engage our students in ways that will benefit our community and our students, all of our students. Now, our curriculum currently includes 2 very good books that already highlight atrocious treatment of women, but in other countries. The novel, The Breadwinner, is about a 12-year-old girl born in Afghanistan who cuts her hair and dresses like a boy to support her family after her father is arrested by the Taliban. And Sold, about a young girl born in Nepal who was sold by her stepfather into sexual slavery in India, where she is beaten, threatened with a stick dipped in hot sauce, and raped daily until she is rescued by an American. Now, an objective worldview is absolutely critical to successfully prepare our students to change the world. And shouldn't that be our mission? Instead, these 2 books combined reflect an ethnocentric worldview. They ignore the stick in our own eye and miss the opportunity to make life better for all of us right here at home. Speak is a suitable replacement for either one of these books. Dr. Highland, board policy gives you, as superintendent, sole responsibility for recommending books to the board for approval. Why must Speak wait for the next 7-year ELA curriculum review cycle when 2 other ELA books have been sent to the board for their approval during your first 9 months as superintendent? Board members, Pennsylvania state law gives a 2/3 majority of you the authority to add Speak to our curriculum even without a recommendation from our superintendent. Any one of you can make a motion to start this process. This is no time for silence. The time to speak is now. Do it for our community. Do it for our students. Do it for the 5 victims raped in America while I was speaking tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsico. We did not have any other pre-registered speakers this evening. If anyone in the audience would like to come to the microphone and speak for 2 minutes on any item, you may do so now. Is anyone else interested in speaking this evening? Seeing none, we can move on to our closing items. Does anyone have any announcements or reminders? Mrs. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I'm just going to give a shout out to one of my favorite people in the world. I see Mrs. Rosemary Ryan in the audience. She was our board secretary for many, many years and is just such a wonderful person. So hello and welcome and thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackburn. I echo those sentiments. And I would like to thank our bus driver for being here this evening. I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I know you are one of our bus drivers. Bruce, thank you, Bruce, for being here. And thank you for being one of our bus drivers. We so appreciate everything that you and your colleagues do to get our students back and forth to school safely every day.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments this evening? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.